All right, welcome back to the Few Show, everybody. My name is Bud. I am Chief of Staff at Xfusion.io and co-host of the Few Show. I am excited to be joined today by my guest, Brendan Falk. Brendan is co-founder and CEO of Fig. Fig makes engineers more productive in the terminal. Brendan is originally from Australia and studied economics and computer science at Harvard. Brendan, thank you for being on the show today, buddy. It's awesome to have you.
Thank you very much for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, right on. Hey, before we start talking about Fig and what all that entails, I just kind of want to go a little bit into your background. You graduated from Harvard just last year in 2020, correct?
Yep.
All right. So
pandemic graduation.
Yes, that had to have been all kinds of fun, huh? So while you were doing that, that's not where your entrepreneur life began, right? Like you were back in 2015, before you kind of even started at Harvard, you were into the entrepreneurship life. You started State Rankers, which we can get into. You've just been kind of an entrepreneur from the word go when you were just a lad, I guess you could say. Kind of explain to me what has drawn you into business, and at such a young age. Why were you just drawn into this world?
I think I was pretty similar to a lot of kids who just honestly wanted to have some extra pocket money and extra spending money to do some other stuff that I wanted to do. And I realized pretty quickly that you can work for 10, 20 bucks an hour and you can get there. That's one way of doing it, but that doesn't really scale. You can, as an 18-year-old or 17-year-old, pretty hard to get above a $20, $30 salary unless you're truly exceptional or something. And so I just realized that I need to do something bigger. Like I read all these big books and basically you need to own equity in something, and that's the way you can make even more money. And so I just started to do some programming stuff. I realized a lot of people had issues with tech at like these bigger companies. And I would just start building websites for people and making some money and going, I can start a business building websites for people and I can make $1,000 or $2,000 for something that takes me 10 hours. Like that's a pretty good return on my time. Awesome. I'm just going to keep doing stuff like this. I always just loved entrepreneurship. In Australia, it is getting bigger. Like the whole idea of doing a startup is getting bigger, but it's never, there are a few home run successes. The rest, everyone ends up moving to the US. But I would just sort of religiously be following the sort of TechCrunch articles about these cool startups doing these cool techie things and just thinking, like, yeah, I want to do that. I was always building apps and I had random app ideas. I just always wanted to do something and be a sort of founder, even though I didn't quite know what it was. And I just started doing things and made a bunch of mistakes. You mentioned State Rankers. Like I thought, that was good, but it wasn't. I learned a lot from doing that. I failed a lot and came to Harvard, had another idea. Yeah, that idea failed. I learned a ton from that. Now working on Fig, it's just every time I've worked at another company, I've always asked the smartest people working there, like, you're so smart, you clearly know so much about this space. Why don't you do your own thing? And everyone was just like, risk or whatever. And they were happy in this stable environment. And I just figured if I'm young, now is the perfect time to be taking these big swings. And sure, if they fail, I'm going to end up at another company. But if they succeed, fantastic. So in my mind, like the risk is actually so much lower than people think because I'm young. And the upside is huge. And I also just love doing it. Like I love working on different ideas and solving different problems. It's a great thing to be able to do full time. It's just the stuff that I love doing.
Right. You said you made a lot of mistakes, but I mean, still, like I'm going to go back to State Rankers here. It still got acquired by somebody. I mean, is that how you paid for college? Was doing these?
No, it was a super, super small acquisition. It was just sort of equity. And it's definitely nice to say it was acquired, but the idea was I was working for another company at the time whilst doing this on the side. And it was also an ed tech company. State Rankers, as a quick summary, was in Australia, the best students in specific exams state rank in the exam. So if you come first in the state in English, for instance. You state ranked, essentially. It's a very prestigious thing. And I started this business where it was like a tutoring business, essentially. We'd only hire, like tutoring and lectures and whatnot, we'd only hire people who had state rank. Like, these are the best students, and they were going to be tutoring your sons and daughters for their exams in the following year. Like, that was the idea. And like, it's a competitive market. Education is a really competitive market. Parents want their children to succeed. And I was also at the same time working for another ed tech company that is now huge and is helping with college admissions, helping with tutoring, helping with a whole bunch of things. And we just realized it would be a sort of natural fit for me to merge all of the stuff that I had built in Australia into this company, and for that company to keep going. So for me, I was already working there. It was just like a natural fit. And I don't think I've actually sold my equity in the company, but I did make enough money, not enough to pay for college entirely, but made a good bit of money once I sell the equity, I guess.
Nice. So you go through Harvard, you graduate magna cum laude, and the entire time, from what I can see, and from what I've, from the homework that I've done, like, you didn't just go there and study. Like, you went there, you studied, you graduate top of your class, and the entire time that you're there, you're working for other companies, you're doing internships, and I mean, you're just killing it on all fronts, right? So, I mean, you just have this tremendous drive. So you do this, you get out of you get out of Harvard, and you say, okay, now's the time to start a real business. So let's go for Fig. How does that work?
The way we got to Fig, a little different. I guess when you look at the sort of linear trajectory of my LinkedIn, I guess it seems a lot like that. But absolutely, there are a bunch of twists and turns as to how we got there. During school, especially at a place like Harvard, everyone is very ambitious and very motivated. And if you're not doing something, you feel like you're behind. At least that's the mindset I had. And so trying to meet as many people, do as many things. I was only there for 4 years. I absolutely loved it. But even now, I've graduated, I'm 1 year out. I really do miss all of the stuff that was going on and just being involved in it. So I feel like in general, I did try and make the most of it. And that included jobs and internships over the summers and being part of different clubs and societies. Plus, also on the side, I was working on these different startups. The way we landed on Fig, and we as my co-founder, Matt, who was my roommate throughout school, he's very techy as well, but also grew up building iPhone apps and just like launching ideas, just like wanting to do something cool. And we met at our first week of school and just went, hey, like, let's just start building random stuff together. We built a bunch of stuff. All of them failed. Like, some of them had some cool successes and some cool stories, but these weren't home runs whatsoever. And we decided applying to YC was a pretty good way of allowing us to work on something full time after graduating. And it's like this interesting thing, but at Harvard, when you graduate, everyone is looking, what's the prestigious thing that you have on your resume? And people are going to work at these big banks or these big consulting firms. And if you're going to work at a tech startup, it's sort of weird for people to say, like, I'm working on a tech startup. People would look at you and be like, oh, okay, cool. What's the prestigious thing? What's your optionality? And that sounds really bad, but that's sort of what happens. And
sure,
YC is this great tick of approval. It's this stamp that says, okay, it's the Goldman Sachs of startups. It's the whatever else. Like, that's how people see it. So when we said, if we got into YC, we can tell our parents, we can tell our friends, we're doing YC, we're a legit thing. That wasn't the only reason we applied. Like, we wanted to do it, but that's the sort of stereotype. That's the mindset we sort of had. And obviously, it's like a fantastic accelerator, and I'll talk through how much we love doing it. It's the best decision we ever made. So we really were trying to optimize to get into YC, and they had this thing called the deferral program, where I think that's the name, but you get in your senior fall and you start straight after graduating. And so what that means is they're trying to compete with tech kids going to work at Google and Facebook, who in their senior fall are getting those job offers. And if it's my senior fall and I'm trying to decide, should I do a startup that may or may not get backed by Y Combinator or any other VC, or should I get this safe job at a big tech company? Like, people are going to go for the safe job. And so that's what YC was trying to do, is try to give you the safety net, try to give you that stamp before graduating, and around the same time as the Facebooks and the Googles getting their job offer. So we applied then. we applied with one idea, we interviewed with a different idea, we got accepted. The YC partners were like, we like you guys, your idea sucks, come up with something new. Wasn't as blunt as that, but it was like more or less the same thing. Come up with something new, and they basically said, you guys aren't starting until the summer after graduating. That's 8 months from now. So you have so many times, so you have a lot of time to iterate here. Like, use this time wisely and try and come into YC with something really, really strong. So you can, during YC, you could grow. Whereas a lot of companies come into YC and they pivot instantly and they're starting from square one. So we, over those 8 months, iterated through a ton of ideas. Again, we failed, we learned a lot. We worked out how to like work together as a team properly. We worked on building bigger infrastructure than the stuff we've done in our internships. We learned so much in this time, and it actually turned out through that iteration process. We struggled so much with the terminal that the idea for how can we make the terminal easier, the idea for Fig came from those iterations.
Right on. Okay, so the terminal, I want to get into that a little bit because I am not the tech person, right? Like, I am the people person. So the terminal kind of throws me for a loop. So let's talk about the terminal a little bit and what exactly that is and what exactly you're doing in the terminal to make that better and what exactly Fig is all about.
Okay, so a bunch of questions there. Let's start with what the terminal is, what the shell is another term for it. So in the early days of computers, there was no mouse, right? You would type into this sort of black interface, this black screen with this white text. You would type in, say, hello world. So you'd hit enter and it would output hello world. And that's it. Like, that was your way of interacting with computers. And the physical machine that you would use to interact with the sort of the brains, the computer, was called the terminal. It was literally based on like typewriters, these teletype printers, these really archaic things. And what ended up happening is these computers started getting smaller and started getting smarter. And they merged these like massive computers, the brains, with these like hardware, like this sort of dumb hardware essentially, into the one thing. And you can, if you're on a computer today, if you're on Mac, just hit Command Space or just find the Terminal app. Or if you're on Windows, you can open up PowerShell or a couple of these other tools, like Cygwin is another popular one. The idea is that is the way, it is like a very quick way of interacting with all of the processes that are running on your computer at any given time. And so what Windows did in the sort of 80s, 90s, and 2000s was make everything a GUI. A GUI is a graphical user interface, which is, I want to build an app that allows me to do this, point, click, point, click, point, click. But what the terminal and the shell allow you to do is, well, that's great if you're just a person sitting at a desk, like clicking on things. But if you're trying to manage 10,000 machines, 10,000 servers, you're trying to do these bulk tasks, which is what software engineers do all the time. You can't point and click 10,000 times. That doesn't scale. You have to be able to do it using some sort of script or an automated language or some automations. And that's what the terminal enables you to do. Like, another way I like to describe it is, if you've seen the movie The Matrix with the black screen and the text, the green text, like that is sort of what the terminal looks like, which is pretty funny. It's very, very scary. Yeah. And so the interesting thing about the terminal is it was built in the 70s. Like, the terminal that we use today, we could go back to one of the terminals in the 70s and it's almost the same. Like, it is, in 1978, this thing called the VT100 came out. It was the standard for the terminal, but it is what we have on our computers today is emulating what existed with this machine in the 70s. Anyway, I won't ramble on too long, but the idea is this tool is still used by every single software engineer, every single hardware engineer, every single data scientist. When you're learning to code, you have to use it. At work, you have to use it. Salespeople have to use it to spin up sort of testing environments so that they can sell to customers. Like, it is still used by every single engineer, and there are 60 million of those. And what's crazy is it hasn't changed since the 70s. And so this is where we were going, okay, it's 2020. We're still using a tool that has not changed at all since the 70s. We have to use it. There are very few alternatives. And it's really freaking hard because it was built in the 70s. It wasn't built for the workflows we're doing today. And so this is where Fig comes in, is we take this tool that is used by 60 million people that is really hard to use, and we make it easier for beginners. We make it more productive for the advanced engineers who are used to using it. We just help them type faster. And we also make it more productive for teams. So if everyone is using Fig, and everyone is using this terminal. Currently, it's very isolated, but what can we do when people are sort of using this tool at the same time? What collaboration features can we build into it?
Okay. So I got on your website, and usually I can get on a website and get on there and be like, oh, okay. Look through there and be like, yeah, this is awesome. I can figure this out. But again, I'm not a tech guy. Sure. So tell me if I'm wrong here. And I hope I'm not, because I'll look like an idiot. But basically, it looks to me like a developer can get on there and start typing in code into the terminal, right? And then Fig helps just basically give you kind of like what autocorrect would do on a phone, right? And just basically make everything faster. And that's what the idea behind Fig would be.
It is. So what we have on our website is a hyper-focused version of what the big part of Fig is. And so I'll start with the big part of Fig, and then I'll tell you why it's so hyper-focused right now. So you have the terminal. It's a black screen, and you type stuff into it, you hit enter, and then it outputs something. That's all the terminal is. You can call it code, you can call it bash or shell, whatever you want. But like that's, you type stuff in and it outputs stuff. And what we found is there are people whose job relies on them using the terminal. And they have to know the exact sequence of characters to type in and hit enter. They have to know how all of it works, because if they don't, if they try and run something and it errors, they can't do their job. There are people who are learning how to code at Harvard, for instance, who, in order to get an A or like to even pass a class, they have to know how to use this tool. There are people who just have to know how to use it. And so the first thing we built for Fig was, why don't we, if your job relies on you knowing this, if your grade at school relies on you knowing how to use it and you don't know how to use it and it's really hard to learn, like Fig can come in and can make it easier. And so your analogy there of like autocomplete or autocorrect on your phone is the perfect example of, it's an interesting example actually. When I'm typing something in a text, like I know what I'm going to type, and that is purely making me faster if it sort of auto-suggests what I want to type next. Whereas in the terminal, if you know what you're going to type, Fig can auto-suggest what you're going to type next, and we can make you faster. But for the first implementation of what we built, there are people who don't even know what they need to type. And so that's where Fig can come in, and you type one character, and we say, here is the whole world of what you can type next. If Fig disappears, then you've done something wrong. That's how we have built Fig. Is nice. Fig is not showing anything, you have done something wrong. So the first problem we tried to solve was the confidence, or I guess in this case, the lack of confidence in typing stuff into the terminal. Was this is this scary environment where my job is on the line here. If I get this wrong, or if I don't know how to use this, I'm screwed. And Fig can come in and give you the confidence that when you see Fig and you hit enter, it's going to input the correct thing and then give you the output that you need. And then it turns out that for the really advanced people who know what they're doing, they can type really quickly, and Fig is just purely a mechanism of being more productive. It's like this interesting scale where, for early users, we're really, really helpful in just discovery. And then for the later users, you know what you're doing, you're just faster. Like I ended up honing in on the thing that we're honing in on now. But taking a step back, like what we've actually built with Fig is a mechanism that allows other people to build apps on top of the terminal. So we noticed these problems. Like I just gave two problems. I'm a beginner. I have no freaking clue what I'm doing in the terminal. I'm an advanced user. I want to be as fast as possible in the terminal. Those are two problems. And what we have built with Fig is the ability for anyone in the world to build their own app inside the terminal. And we've just built the first app. And as you said, that first app is autocomplete. But there are a ton of other problems in the terminal. There are like infinite problems. It's crazy. Like we speak to users and they go, I love this. Can you help me solve this, 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 and this? And we're like, yeah, oh my God, but how are we going to solve all of those problems? Like we can't do it. And so we realized because we can't solve every problem, we need to build the infrastructure that allows others to build the apps that solve their own problems. And so that's really what Fig is. It is this infrastructure that allows you to build apps to solve your own problems. It's like a tool. The first tool, the first app that we have built is autocomplete, but you can build anything on top of it. And that's what we're really excited to launch really soon is we've been hyper-focused on autocomplete just to make sure that we can actually solve the problem in the terminal, that we've built the infrastructure that allows us to solve it. And then we're going to open it up so anyone can build these apps and have this app ecosystem for the terminal seeded by the apps that we are building, but anyone in the world can build an app and share it with the rest of the world, which is cool.
Yeah, that is cool. The thing that really stood out to me was when I was looking at that, the developers that are putting their stamp behind this, they're saying, hey, I've only been using this for 5 minutes and I love this thing, or I've only been using this for a week and I love this. But, I'm not a developer, but I've worked with developers and I work with the tech guys, and you don't get developers working on a project and stepping away after 5 minutes to say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and write a review on a product and then go back to work, right? Like, this is something that they absolutely love if they're willing to take a step away from work to write a review on the product and then go back to work. That's got to make you feel pretty good,
It does make us feel good. Yeah, I think what we have, the example is everyone is the Ford Model T is everyone's trying to make a faster horse, and when Ford comes in and makes the car, and once you see it, you go, we've been thinking about this the wrong way our entire lives. Like, this is so obvious. And so what we see in 10 years is Fig, what we've built. When you get a new computer, you download Fig. It's just the obvious thing. Like, why would you ever go back to the way it was previously? It just seems so dumb. Like, as I said at the start, this is a tool that hasn't changed since the 70s. It is used by every single developer in the world, and everyone just puts up with it and just goes, oh, okay, well, like, this is what I have to do. And what we're trying to do with Fig is, that's crazy. Like, if you're going to use it, at least make it usable, at least make it more collaborative, at least do all these other things. And we're building the infrastructure that is going to enable that.
Yeah, and that's awesome. Do you see that changing anytime in the future? Do you see the terminal changing from the way it's been since the 70s?
It is, I think, I think it's called the Lindy effect, where the longer something has been in existence, the longer it's likely to stay in existence. And terminals as old as computers, basically. So is there going to be a snap thing that is going to change overnight? I think it's unlikely. I think what the terminal is, as I was saying before, it's a way of doing these batch tasks, these big automations, these big scripts that you can't just point and click. And that's what software developers are doing, is they're taking these complex systems and they're trying to build automations on top of them. And you're eventually going to get to the point where you can't point and click, you're going to have to automate it, and the terminal is the place to do it. The language that you use in the terminal can be different. Like, there's PowerShell, there's Bash, there's Fish, there's C Shell. Like, there are all these different ways of interacting with it. And I can totally see there being a new shell, which I won't go into too much the differences between them. And that's going to take time to get adopted, but it will almost certainly come. But this idea of typing something, hitting enter, and getting an output, I don't think it's going to go away for a very, very long time. And if it does, it'll just be for like a very, very niche part of it that is going to potentially take over your workflow for something, but not everything. Like, the terminal still, it's the glue for literally every tool. Everyone builds one of these integrations.
Where do you see yourself heading in the next 5 or 10 years? Like, what problem do you see yourself tackling next?
The way we set up Fig is really interesting. That, as I was saying, we're sort of the infrastructure that enables other people to build a tool that solves their own problem. And I like that. I really like that, because it doesn't pigeonhole us into one specific area. It enables us to do sort of anything. I think of Fig a bit like, I'll name some tech companies here, AWS or Atlassian or HashiCorp. These are these big companies that have lots of sub-products. And the reason they can be successful, whereas most companies have one major product, and that's a home run product, and everything is built around that. Whereas these companies have products that are solving different problems, but they're all cohesive. They're all under the same umbrella. And you look at AWS, they have 200 maybe even more products. And if one of them fails, they've got 199 more, and they probably have 50 more ideas that they're working on right now. And so what with Fig, what I was saying is, okay, there is an engineer that has a problem, like their job relies on them using the terminal and they don't know how to do it. There is another engineer who just wants to be as fast as possible in the terminal. Those are two problems. As I said, we've got hundreds of problems that we can go after. And so we can just keep having shots on goal, and something is going to have to pan out. If not just one thing, likely, many, many things, because this is a space that has barely been touched for so long. But we can just build this app ecosystem. It's like, think of the Apple App Store. I know there are negative connotations about it recently with the sort of pricing model and everything, but if someone builds an app, there can be 2 or 3 other apps, and as long as they're solving a problem, they can all succeed. Like, something is going to have to succeed here. So this idea of building an app store really excites me, that we can just keep solving problems and put it under this umbrella of the Fig umbrella. So where do I see myself in 5 years? Like, obviously, if someone asked me, let's say Fig got an acquisition offer tomorrow, I'd be like, well, what I'd like to do is just keep solving developer problems. And what we have set up with Fig is this beautiful umbrella that allows us to keep solving developer problems because we're building an app ecosystem. So I think I would just start another dev tools company if I did that. And I've already got one that I'm really, really happy with that can help me solve more problems in the future. So yeah, in 5 years, Fig can do sort of any engineering task, which help solve any engineering related problem. And the reason we've done it is we've set up such a solid foundation that we can build upon and just start solving problems. But this foundation is really, really strong, which I really like.
Nice. So let's just go ahead and ask you the last couple questions here that I asked to everybody that's on this show. What advice would you give to any founders or soon-to-be founders that are on this program, buddy?
This is all based on stuff that we got wrong, and also stuff that Y Combinator has told us, which at the time is hard to hear, but they're totally right. I think 2 big things. One is, if you are building something and people aren't paying for it, or they're not using it 20 plus times a day, you don't have product market fit. It's tough to hear, but I think one trap we fell into is we'd launch something, we get a ton of people using it for one day, and then they would drop off and they would never return. That is not product market fit. Like saying you have 1,000 users, that's not interesting. It's saying you have monthly or daily or weekly actives, like, more interesting, especially daily. Like, you want people coming back or you want people paying for it. Like anything else, you're just sort of wasting your time, unfortunately. Obviously, there are exceptions to that rule. It's but you don't want to bargain. You want to really hold true to that, because when you have that, then you've got something going. It's just guaranteed you have something's going well if you've got that. I think a second thing is, during my childhood, I would build a lot of iPhone apps, as I said, and I would focus on just ideas. I'd go, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we had an app that did this or did that? And that is the wrong way to think about building a startup. The right way is, what is the problem you are solving? Who is the person who has this problem? Is it actually a problem? How big of a problem is it? And if you can find a big problem, even if it's for a small number of people, it's like all these VCs say, oh, it has to attack a market of 10 bazillion people. It doesn't matter. If you can solve a really, really big problem for a small number of users, then you can just tangentially go to the next market of users and solve another big problem that's slightly adjacent to that one. The hard thing is finding the right problem to solve. And so separating a problem from a solution is really, really important early on. And so a good example with Fig is, the solution here is we've built autocomplete for your terminal. We make it easy to use the terminal. But as I said at the very start, really clearly, here are 2 types of users, and here are the 2 problems they have. There are the people who are at school and the people who are at their job who are forced to use the terminal. They have no freaking clue how to do it. It's really scary, and they just need to be able to use the terminal. That's a problem. That's a big problem. I don't care what the solution is. That is a big problem. And people need that solved. And there are a bunch of solutions to it, but that's a big problem. And then another one, which isn't as big of a problem, but it's still a problem, but we can move into it, is I'm a really productive terminal user and I just want to be as productive as possible. I want to move as fast as I can. That's a problem. It's not a huge problem. It's not like, if it takes me 10 seconds versus 11 seconds to do something, that's not a game changer. It's good. I'll use it if it's going to work every time. It's not a game changer. It's still a problem though. And you really want to focus on this, what YC calls the hair on fire problem, where Your job depends on getting a solution to this. Your life depends on getting a solution to this. Your grades at school depend on getting a solution to it. And that's what we focused on first with Fig, is solve a like really big problem with people and then move up into other problems.
Nice. And good job. I think you did a fantastic job in doing so. So then the last question that I have for you today is, what is the best way for our viewers to get in touch with you if they so choose?
I would start with Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter, Brendan Falk, but follow Fig on Twitter. I think that's the better upsell here. It's literally at Fig. And we see it as a community for people who are interested in the terminal. We see it as a place for us to interact with all of these people who are struggling with the terminal and with the shell, like with this development setup. I think that is, I'm super responsive on that. I'm super responsive to my own Twitter. Like anyone can email me as well, brendan@fig.io. I always respond. I will always respond, or like almost always respond. I think I've been saying that for a while, and I don't know if I can follow up on that because I'm getting a lot of emails at this point. If anyone ever emails me and it's less than 100 characters and they have a very clear question that is like, I want 100 words, sorry. Here is one sentence about me. Here is one sentence about what I want to get out of you. You can just treat me like a machine. I'll just like give you an answer and we can start an email thread. But if you give me 2 pages of text, like I don't have time to read it. I'm sorry. I would love to help. I'm so happy to help other people. We spend a ton of time helping people with their terminal setups, like making sure Fig, not just Fig works, but making sure their terminal works and they're actually as productive as possible. I love doing that sort of stuff, but you got to try and make it as easy as possible for me, because if I can't do it, if it's not easy, it's just going to make it so hard to do it. So yeah, I feel like that's a standing thing I can say is, if it's less than 100 words, even less than like 70 words, you don't really need that much. Here is who I am. Here is the problem that I have, and like I would like for your advice on. I'll give you my advice. Super easy for me. So yeah, add Fig on Twitter, Brendan Falk on Twitter. You can follow all the co-founders. You can look at everyone Fig is following on Twitter, and then brendan@fig.io is my email.
Nice. Well, Brendan, thank you so much for your time. I know we need to get you out of here. You have a super good day. Appreciate the time, buddy.
Thank you, bud. Appreciate it. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been fun. Have a good one, man.